Hi, I'm Tony Bowen and welcome to my Corn Country Rails. This is an update video on my signaling system that I started in May of 2020. Like many model railroaders, I was a little intimidated at first to kind of dive into the world of signaling my railroad. But so far, I've put in a set of circuit boards from Untitled. I'm using the Ts2 circuit boards and putting in a pair of searchlight signals from Custom Signal Systems out of Utah every month. And part of that reason is basically, like many railroaders, I'm working on a budget. And so signaling can tie up a lot of money, and I knew I couldn't afford that expense all at once, but breaking it up over the months has definitely been the way to go for me. So with this update video, I'm going to kind of take you around for all of the signals that I put in on the lower deck of the layout, kind of tell you some troubleshooting things that I ran into to hopefully, help you along to avoid those same troubles that I ran into before I get ready to signal the upper deck of my layout, which will start in October. And at this rate, I'm hoping that I'll have the entire railroad signaled by February to March of 2021. So I hope you sit back. I hope you enjoy the video. If you have any questions or concerns or that, feel free to leave comments on that at the end of the video. So enjoy. Thank you for watching. All right, just a little review of what you're going to need for every signal. With the Azatrax Ts2, it comes with the circuit board, the infrared sensors, and there's plenty of wire on the wire leads, which is great for being able to reach the circuit board wherever you decide to mount it underneath your layout. You will also need to have some kind of power source for the signaling system. I went ahead and bought the one that Azatrax sells. They sell two different versions, a 9-volt and a 12-volt version. So I thought it was easier just to get it from them. You can do several signal boards from just this one power source. As I've stated, I got my signals from Custom Signal Systems, and part of the reason for that was I could always have signals basically on demand. When I looked at other signal manufacturers, they might have a few handfuls of signals, but I knew by the time I completed this project, I would want 40 signals, and I wanted to make sure they were all the same throughout the whole railroad, and this seemed to be the best source where I could guarantee that would happen. To kind of keep up with that railroad standard, I came up with a signal tin plate. The tin plate was a very useful tool. I could lay it in between the rails and could have the distance on either end where I wanted to have my infrared sensors to be located. But I also had a cross member on the tin plate with little pilot holes where the actual signal mask would be drilled into the layout and all my wires would be fed down. Any of us who have ever tried to run wire through a layout also knows that if there's a will, there's a way. It's going to get hung up on anything. So I also would run straws down the holes and kind of glue them in place. That way when I was running the very fine magnetic wire and their leads, that they wouldn't get snagged up on anything such as plywood, styrofoam, any of the scenery material. They just kind of slide right through that straw, and then I could just kind of work them out through the bottom of the straw and feed them to the Ts2 circuit board where they would be hooked up. So these worked out really well. And as you can imagine, you have a bundle of wires that are underneath the layout, both for your infrared and for your signals. So real quick for me, I just took some blue painter's tape, put WB for my westbound infrared signals, EB for my eastbound infrared signals, and then everything else basically goes right to the Ts2 circuit board. So if you look at the Ts2 circuit board, if you start at the top, the brown and white wires, that's the power going in. That can continue to be daisy chained from Ts2 to Ts2 to Ts2. The blue and white wires at the top, that is essentially carrying the signal. That's so when you get other Ts2s together that they can interact. So this one is carrying a signal out
You would also have a blue and white at the bottom, which this board does not have, that would be also sending one back. If you look at essentially the left side of the board, those orange, green, yellow, white wires coming in and out, those are just your infrared signals. The top part of that board is basically controlling an eastbound. The bottom part is controlling the westbound. If you look at the right side of the board, your wires that are your green, red, yellow, white, one of those is controlling the eastbound signal. The set right below it is controlling the westbound signal. So they're very easy once you get the board in place. Everything just kind of draws itself right into that board, and then you're pretty much ready to go. You're ready to start operating and seeing if your signals function.
So the lower deck where I have put signals, there are 5 pairs of signals installed for roughly over 100 feet of track on the lower level. And when I had the first signal put in, it was neat to see the train go by, and it would drop from the clear to the restricted aspect, and then it would time out and go back to amber, and then essentially after another set amount of time, it would go back to clear. It wasn't until I had 3 sets of signals installed that you really get that feeling of restricted blocks, trains moving, being able to see when a train was coming at you, and that has added really to the realism of having a railroad signal. So we will follow a train and just kind of watch how the signals work on the lower deck of the layout. With signaling the railroad, I've also learned a few things, like this. Obviously, it's giving the wrong indication. If a train is coming at me, that signal should not be green. It should be red. This is a case where I could put a shunt in, and that's what I was thinking about doing in May, where I could just have a little toggle switch and could throw that. But now, having had several signals on the railroad, I'm thinking the easiest thing is going to be is where my staging yard is, put a set of signals right there so that it already is giving the correct indication when the train comes out of the staging area to this signal, so we know if something is coming or not. So that has definitely been a learning lesson. The other item right here where this locomotive is this is also currently a virtual block. So the train is coming into the railroad room and essentially will hit all the signals in the right succession. The signal that's facing us starts the virtual block. So if we had a train going away from us, it would obviously be red. It would stay red for about a 14-second period. Then it would go to an approach yellow, and then it would go back to restored clear green. And so having a set of signals at my staging area would also tell me if a train was sitting in this town and it's still red, that something is in that block. So either way I look at it, putting a set of signals in my staging yard really helps correct this situation. So we'll follow this train as it makes its way around the layout. As it hit the first set of infrared that it rolled over, the signal went from a green to a red. And as the train continues to go by, both signals will remain red. And when the caboose rolls by, the block that the train is just coming out of will be restored back to green. And there it goes. And this time it is a true clear block. So as our train is heading west, it has a green at the next set of signals that it will soon hit. And for the block that it's currently in, it has a red, showing that it is occupying the block. If we go to our third set of signals out, it has a green, and every signal beyond this, which is 2 more, also is green in both directions. It has not been detected yet on the westbound side. However, if we look at the eastbound side, it is showing us a yellow, that something is a block out and will soon enter this block. So if something is coming at this, they better be taking the siding and reducing speed. So we are back at our second set of signals with a red facing us and a green facing our train as it rolls on through. And now it's showing that that block is clear. And our first set of signals that the train went through, that dropped a red as soon as it entered the train room, now that it's out of the block, has been given a yellow and will be all clear once the train hits and clears the third block. So this definitely lets any train know following it that there may be something ahead of it. They need to reduce speed. This time we'll watch the westbound signal that is green drop to red, and our eastbound signal that is right here is already displaying a red because the train is in the block. So our train is just about here, so that block will get, or that signal will get ready to drop. And now it's at a restricted red. And it will continue to stay red, but our eastbound signal right here has already been restored to green. As you can see it illuminating against my finger. Our signal here that is red will stay red until it hits the next set of signals and the caboose clears it. Then it will go to yellow. When it hits the third set of signals away, it will be restored back to green. So just something to consider if you're thinking about signaling your railroad. I have 5 signals on this lower deck. This pair of signals here happens to be in the middle of the railroad for the lower deck. So essentially, looking at it, our train has already gone by 2 signals. So the first signal is now green. The signal we just passed is yellow. This one is red. And so as it hits the other one, you're going to see different aspects. And that was part of my planning too. I didn't want it necessarily to always be, as you came down to the railroad room and looked at it, that all the signals were always green. So I really chose to do an odd number so that the train, as it went across the railroad, had the different colored aspects behind it. I didn't want it to always be just all green. Sometimes it is, obviously, if no train's gone by and they've cleared everything. But in an operation sense, there's some variety to what the signal heads will display. And so just something to keep in mind for if you're thinking about signaling your railroad, of how many signals you want, and considering, you know, how far out they're going to be and the different aspects you might want to see. The fourth set of signals that the train will go through shows obviously the signal that is facing us, that's eastbound, already in the restricted red, that the train is in the block, and the westbound that's facing the train is already at green until the train rolls by it, and then of course it will go into the red mode, and when the caboose clears the eastbound signal, it will be restored back to green. And there goes the signal, restored back to green, showing that that block is now unoccupied. The fifth set of signals that the train will hit, the signal facing us that's going east is obviously the restricted red. The signal away from us is west, it is green. This is the last set of signals the train will hit in the layout room before it goes into the staging area. So I will also show you what happens to the westbound signal so you can see how it virtually times out. So the eastbound is restored back to green, and let's see what happens to the westbound signal. So if we watch this from the same location, but watching it go by the westbound signal, we'll watch it go from green to the restricted red. There's the red. And essentially beyond this signal, it goes into the staging yard. So this becomes the start of a virtual block, or in this case, dark territory. So the caboose will go by it, and it will stay restricted red. But the problem is the caboose doesn't get out of sight before it changes. And so it will go from a red to now yellow, and then it will eventually go back to green. And so this is where I've decided another set of signals, even if they're just dwarf signals, will probably be installed in my staging area so that if somebody is out here in the layout room, you kind of know what's coming in or out of the staging area. The other thing is it also lets our staging crew know if anything is coming towards them. So I hope you enjoyed that recap of kind of what I've done this summer and into early fall already with my signaling system. My plan is now to take it onward, to move on to the upper deck. And so be looking for probably an update or two when I get ready to have a few signals in on the upper deck and kind of let you know how that progress is also going. And as I said earlier, if you have any questions or comments, please be sure to leave them below and I'd be glad to answer them. So take care, stay safe, stay healthy, my friends, and I'll talk with you real soon. Take care for now. Bye-bye.